Hello, I'm your host, Leonard Duncan. Welcome to a new episode of ATV-TALK and Motorsports Podcast. Please join us every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We bring you interviews with industry professionals, live events, live news about the motorsports industry in every episode. Enjoy the show. Donnie Pulliam, welcome to ATV-TALK. How are you, sir?
Hey, good to be here. Glad to be on with you, Leonard.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I mean, there's a lot of little discrepancy stories that go on, and you'll fill in all the blanks for me about how this all breaks down and where you fit in the off-road world. And I can't wait to hear about it.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah,
I mean,
just how early do we want to start?
well, my first stories that I heard are three-wheelers,
Okay.
modern three-wheelers. Why don't we go back to where it really started and fill in the blanks for me so that I understand what's going on.
Okay. And I never make anything a short story, right? But I'll try and condense this. So the way far back, you're going to where did it really start on two wheels was BMX biking as a kid, right?
Okay.
So South Louisiana, and for those that don't know, I'm currently situated in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, so kind of South Central. It's not the hotbed for bikes, motocross, ATVs, any of that. Never really has been. I mean, we have had a few good riders from this area. I mean, when you think about, hey, Kevin Windham, one of the best there has been on two wheels, right? There's been some really excellent riders, but kind of few and far between. But I started BMX at the age of 14, bugged my parents enough to get them to take me to a track, and then discovered there was another track. Started going through all that, and the progression through the years was BMX up to a pretty decently serious riding level up through my teens, and then when I got to college, that kind of stopped, and I was at college right here at LSU in Baton Rouge, and I got into mountain biking at that point. And just we actually started an intramural sports club team, LSU team mountain bike, and so we would get together and primarily go on rides, but occasionally hit some races. So I did just a handful of mountain bike races with that, and then about that point in time, I got my first motocross bike. So growing up, of course, my age, hey, I was born early 70s. I'm 51 right now. So I was a kid in the 80s, like, in the golden age of three wheelers, right? So always wanted to ride and race them. I started out on a Yamaha 125 two-stroke three wheeler, the YT 125. I had a little modified Honda 110, which was actually pretty fast, but never ran right, for more than 5 minutes. So that was really what I loved during that time. But what I was able to do was riding on two wheels. And so then into my early 20s, I got actually it was a 94 Yamaha YZ 125, brand new showroom floor. Take it out, go do a few races over the course of about a year and a half, something along those lines. And really just that was my fun for a while, along with continuing to mountain bike just for fun and for training. And then just kind of got out of it for a bit, actually. Got off the two wheelers, sold that bike, just different, life happens, right? Different life stories. And then lo and behold, I'd actually been managing the local BMX track. So we had this unique situation where our parks department here for the Baton Rouge area own the property, and I know this happens a lot. They own the property that a track is on. You think like the Orange YMCA track, is one of the renowned tracks that used to be a big deal. But the Parks Department paid for employees to run this thing. And so that was my gig toward the end of college and into a little bit into grad school, was running and managing this BMX track. And so kind of that was still my way to piddle around with two wheels for a while. And then through meeting some other individuals at the BMX track, I got what I'll call my factory ride, right? So there are these two brothers, Brandon and Justin, and their dad Dale. Really, really great family. And as we get to talking, the kids are riding at the track, and I get to know the dad and well, the mom too, and the whole family. And Dale, just says, "Hey man, I've got this 94 CR 250 and it runs real good. And all I ever do is ride it on the trails, but the boys want to do more motocross. So why don't you just show up and you ride my bike?" And so that's what I did for a few months, to get back into it. I'd show up at the track, and this really gracious individual would bring his bike, let me abuse it for a few motos, and then he wouldn't even let me wash it after. I'd be like, "Oh, let me take it home with me, take it to the house, clean it up." No, he's like, "Oh, I got two to clean with the boys anyway, no big deal." So, of course I'd go over there and help him out and everything. And then pit bike ride, and they had a really great little pit bike track in their backyard. Um, so that was kind of the deal there, and that got me swinging back into it. And then I got myself a bike again, because hey, you can only do that for so long, right? And
Right.
feel like you're taking advantage of others. So got back into it and raced primarily, motocross on dirt bikes for, a handful of years. Got from a point where, I could barely make it around the track if conditions were not so great, to where I could jump out there, actually a handful of times, even like again, realize this is not Southern California or anything, but in Louisiana, our local money class, our open class, so to speak, I could run out there and, hey, I'd pull some hole shots and try and hang with fast guys for a little bit. And at least I wouldn't embarrass myself, right? And I can remember the joke with some of my friends was, I'd always try and get the whole shot, because then that was pizza money for after the race when we were, we were going back to the house and cleaning bikes. At least, hey, we could pay for the pizza with the whole shot money, and they put up $50 or whatever. So, so that was, my gig for a while. Hey, just riding with my local buddies and just trying to progress and get better into my late 20s. And then I really kind of just, got out of it. Hey, I met my future wife, and we were building another house and, planning on kids and all that. So other than having just a four-wheeler, like a Yamaha Big Bear 400 to go, do some work around the house and play around out in the woods, that was all I did for ATVs and dirt bikes, for quite a while. And now keep in mind the whole time, hey, I'm not getting off of two wheels, so I'm still occasionally running into town. We kind of lived out of Baton Rouge at that point. I'd run into town and go, spin some laps on the BMX track, or we have some decent trails here north of Baton Rouge that you can go and ride on. And so I'd go mountain bike occasionally just to get my fix, so to speak. And then, eventually I just started thinking more about it. And the whole time I'd been racing motocross, I guess, again, because of, hey, where I grew up in the piney woods north of the New Orleans area, north of the lake, so to speak, from there. I always loved riding my ATVs in the 80s, and I always wanted to race them. And I just thought it would be great to race them cross country, not necessarily motocross. That just kind of appealed to me a little more on the ATV side. And so lo and behold, I'm sitting around and I find this 1985 ATC 200X on eBay that looked to be really clean, California bike. And, when I bid on it, hey, comes to pass that I win it. I get it shipped out to me, and I start piddling around on that. And then
What year was
started
that?
what year? That would have been 2014 to 2015. And so, gosh, I was into my early, probably turning 40, into my 40s now, because I'm 51 as we speak right now. Um, and I loved playing around on it. I had this, little area, a little piece of land I could go play around and just spin some laps. But I still had that hankering to race. And so I got in touch with, I'd become aware through just friends that Louisiana had a pretty healthy cross country series going. And it was primarily dirt bikes and a little bit on the side by side side of the world at that point. But they had a pretty healthy ATV class. And so I called up the owner of the series, the promoter, and I said, "Hey man, look, I see you have an A class and you have a B/utility class." And I said, all I see amongst all your entries are quads, but can I race this old ATC I have? And he said, hey, sure, why not? We'd love to have somebody else show up. So sure enough, lo and behold, another month or so later, I did a little, few little fix ups and some prep on that old 200X and went out there and ran around to this cross country series, the Louisiana cross country series, and I had a blast. I mean, I got absolutely smoked, right? All the guys on their modern quads, and probably the slowest machine out there would have been, a Z400 or a 400EX that I was competing against, and my 200 was kind of even having some trouble running towards the end of the race because this is an hour-long cross-country race. Um, but I finished and, really had the bug at that point. So, of course, what did I do? Within a month, I had a modern quad. Um, probably not the most popular modern quad, but I had a Kawasaki, their 450. And actually I liked that bike. I liked, I got along with it pretty well. And eventually just you know, electrical gremlins here and there. I kind of got tired of fighting some of that, so I moved from the Cowie to the Yamaha. But during that time and during the course of those years, from say 2015 to 15, I raced a few rounds. 16, pretty much probably two-thirds of the series, and it's been about a 10 or 12 round series most years. 17, some, family and life and health stuff pulled me away from it almost all of 17. I think if you look back in the results, I think I made one round. But then, 18 and 19, I was able to start getting back into it. And somewhere in there, I guess eventually, it got to where in 2021, maybe 22. I was top of the B class and was able to, win the championship in the B class on the quad, and then had to jump up with the faster guys in A, which has been a lot of fun since then. But it's, that's kind of how the progression has been. I mean, there's a lot more in between, 2021, so I guess I went from 2015 hitting that one cross country race on the three-wheeler to 2021 hooking up with the group of guys in Florida who still race motocross, to this day. They have a pretty decent little scene over there where a really core group of guys still race multiple times a month. I mean, they raced this past weekend. In fact, I was getting videos and pictures to my group chat that I'm in with them today, because they were racing near Orlando yesterday. Um, so that's really, from the more recent three-wheeler piece of it. I They used to have, maybe you saw it in Dirt Wheels, but they were calling it the three-wheeler national in Florida at Dade City
Right.
Motocross, and they
Right.
had that for a handful of years. And so again, hey, I'm set up and ready to go one year, like literally bikes in the truck, a 250R and a 200X, and loaded, gear ready, and then something else, happened here around home and everything, and I couldn't make the event. So of course I took a lot of ribbing for that because, the wonders of the internet, I start getting to know these guys over there and the guys who were helping to keep things going at the time. And, I'm telling them, hey, I'm coming, I'm gonna make your race. I'm really excited to come meet y'all and get to race these three-wheelers finally. And then it didn't happen. So then jump ahead to 21, and that was kind of getting into peak COVID, right? And I can remember my wife. Go
Let me
ahead.
interrupt just for a second here. Are these guys more traditionalist in the three wheelers they ride?
So there is a wide variety.
Okay.
Some guys are on straight up, like there's one guy, Ty, straight up 250R, ported cylinder, just your classic traditional 250R. Other guys are on modern trikes. One guy, Christian, has done a ton of work on his 350X and has a really fast, really nice handling 350X where he's machined his own clamps. He had, I don't know who it was, but he may have made the swing arm, or he went out to somebody to have it made. And then I believe he had custom axes do a special shock for it. He did all the calcs, and he's really into that, and he's making clamps for people now and everything. But you have that, you have some other 250Rs, you have some other bikes. Mike, I'm probably going to say his wrong last name, Staniker. He won the first moto yesterday, the tidbits I'm getting from the guys. And right now, he normally loves to run a big bore 350X, but right now he's running a conversion he made, which is an earlier Honda CRF 250 with some nice triple clamps, and he adapted a 400EX swing arm and shock to the rear end. So it's got a relatively modern rear, and grafted onto the dirt bike chassis. But I mean, there's kind of a whole, I guess a whole cross section of what you could have out there. And then also, I heard one of your recent shows, y'all were talking more on the electric side of things. There's a guy, Donald Leverington, and Donald, hopefully don't mind me mentioning you, but he, and I did mention to those guys, that whole group chat, I said, hey, if somebody doesn't want their name thrown out tonight, then y'all let me know beforehand. So hopefully he doesn't mind. But Donald has been making some electric trikes. He's a really adept at, doing his own building and machining. He was for a while campaigning a Honda 450 conversion for himself, and he actually had a CRF 150R conversion for his daughter, and she would run sometimes 200 class, sometimes open, a lot of times run both classes with that machine. And that little machine runs really well. I mean, I have a fairly decently modified 200X that we were running down in February down there with those guys, and she was just flat smoking me on the start straight. Every moto I was on the track with her on that little bike versus my 200 with some mods. So
Well,
that's a very healthy bike.
Different engine technology.
Oh yeah,
it should beat you. What I'm really interested in, because you're involved in that group, one of the struggles that I have is I can't always reach out to people because I don't know who some of them are.
right.
And I've had some vibes with a couple of the people, don't remember the name, that they were just not wanting outside. If it wasn't traditional influence, they didn't want it. They didn't want it in their group. Maybe
Okay.
maybe it's a specific individual, but it's just,
Yeah.
you know, you don't get press unless you talk to the press. And
Oh, absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
don't like to consider myself press, but and media, but this is exactly what this is.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, even if, hey, maybe there's only a handful of people watching this live tonight, but I know you put it out on
We're
YouTube.
not
And so then
we're
people,
audio taping. We'll
yeah.
we'll do something live at some point, but this one's
Yeah.
going to be audio taped. So
Oh, okay. Okay. Yep. So yeah, so that's where, those guys, there was one individual who was really, I guess, kind of the main player keeping things organized with the race series in Florida. And it was all primarily happening. There were some series, I guess, when it started. They were going to some of the other racetracks around there. There was one near Tampa. There's one at Waldo, which they still go to. But so there's a good vintage dirt bike series in Florida. I believe it's Sunshine State Vintage Motocross Series, SSVMX. And so they go ahead and they allow the ATCs to run their own class at the vintage events. And I think
nice.
that's how it started back, so we're talking late 20 teens, prior to 2020. They were racing for a handful of years, but as part of those series, they ventured over to Dade City Motocross, which is pretty well-known venue. And Dade consistently races, twice a month or more throughout their series year. And Dade welcomed the ATCs with open arms. And I mean, I can remember going over to Dade City, like after I got to go there for the three-wheeler national, race with these guys, meet these guys, and really liked, the group and the vibe and the competition. And I really liked the venue at Dade City. I liked the combination of the soil and how they would lay jumps out and everything. And so there were times where it didn't even have to be the national or some big doubleheader, but I'd just make the 10-hour drive from Louisiana and I'd bring my three-wheeler and I'd bring a quad. That way, at least it's kind of worth my while. Hey, if the trike breaks, hopefully the quad's still running and I get some motos in, and make it worth my while, so to speak. Um, but there was one individual that was kind of behind the scenes and fostering that through about, yes, it was about 2021, 2022, and then that kind of fell off and that person went away, and so others have tried to pick it back up. So I don't know when you would talk to folks in that group or whatnot, but yeah, I can certainly connect you up with some of those guys because the event we've had, I say they, I haven't had anything to do with putting it on other than attending, but the event they've had the last 2 years in February has been their motocross estates, they call it. So kind of like the MX Nations. Well, the Vintage Series has made it into a team event on Saturday for the dirt bikes, and that's where the event name comes from. But what it translates into for the ATCs is we have a bigger event or a bigger race day for the ATCs, where this year we had ATC Pro for the open bikes and then ATC Amateur, still open, but lesser skill level. And then we had a 200X class. I think this year, if I'm remembering correctly, 200X was combined. I know the previous year we had a 200X expert and just 200X amateur. So you had the chance on Saturday to race a small bike and a big bike, and then on big
Right.
bikes you could split out into your class, and then on Sunday it would just be, I guess, what they would consider a normal round to go along with the vintage motocross series, where there's just one ATC open class, run what you brung, everybody thrown in together.
How do,
But it,
how do these guys feel about the hybrid machines? I know you said there was a couple of them there, but like here on the West Coast, you have TPC making some stuff,
right.
BVC. They're just taking the modern day four strokes and adapting them. How do they feel about that back there? Is it something that they're open to?
Oh yeah, yeah, certainly. So Austin Saxon is one of the guys over there, and have to give Austin a lot of credit. He's really the one that's been driving this event the last 2 years in February with the MX Estates and partnering up with the Vintage Motocross Series to make that event happen. And I mean, he's been beating the bushes, either doing, waffles online of some parts and pieces and whatever, and just getting some sponsors to where, hey, if you do well on the Saturday where they've got some money up, you might walk away with a couple $100 for your trouble, So given that carrot to have riders come in from out of state or far away, like we used to have riders coming down to the ATC National from the Northeast. And so Austin's really been beating the bushes and working that and trying to make that happen. But reason why I'm mentioning him is you're saying, with the conversions, um, he rides a 350X and a really nicely modified 350X, but he has a conversion, a DT based conversion that is really all built. And actually, this year in February, when I was just over there for the race, he had it sitting there on a trailer, and it's a beautiful bike, but there's something locked up in the motor right now. Like he literally didn't even get to run it. He had some motor work done, set it aside, never ran it. The motor's just sitting there as he's putting the conversion together, puts the motor in it, and then tries to kick it over and bring it to life, and no go.
Wow.
So he needs some time with his baby to get it going. But I guess, with that being said, point is, hey, they're open to whatever, and then you have Donald coming in with his electric, trikes now, and he was racing them this weekend, and he's got his younger daughter was racing the little 200 based bike, which I didn't get it on a track, but I got to rip around the pits in it when I was there in February. And man, I mean, that thing is quick. And then his 450 base trike that he's got an electric setup in, um, it literally, I mean, that thing, it goes, and it's not the highest wattage output. And I don't know the setup. This isn't like a Stark based machine or anything.
Okay.
It's
That's what I was
some
thinking.
setup. Yeah, there's something available. I forget, what the manufacturer is, but I mean, he's literally just bought it online. And I've seen a few other people, convert some of their, like a modern Yamaha dirt bike, pull the motor out and put this electric setup in. And that's what Donald has done. And it's really, I know I heard some of your discussion the other day with Mike Walsh and everything, and then with James and talking about how long it takes to swap batteries and such. I watched Donald pop a battery into the bike because he had it on a charger when I walked over to his trailer to talk to him. And he's like, hey, well, let's go ahead and, pop this back in and you can ride mine since you already rode the little one. And I mean, it's literally like, boom, plug and play, almost like just popping a battery in your DeWalt drill.
What was
Um,
life expectancy?
I really don't know. I'd have to talk to him. I mean, he can make a moto, but a moto, you're talking 4 to 6 laps, maybe 10, 12 minutes on an ATC in that setup. I don't know what his overall, we'd have to have a conversation, or I'd have to get on the phone with him or something and talk to him about that and see what he has found. Um, but I don't know if, like, I know the conversation on some of your other discussions was, hey, could you actually make it pit to pit in a desert race or something along those lines? And I don't know, because some of those pits are 30 miles apart and some of those pits are 60 miles apart. And
Right, right.
you may not make that. So
So what is your involvement on the West Coast? Are you looking for the best suspension technology for your sport ATV? Look no further than Elka Suspension, the industry leader in sport ATV suspension technology. With championship wins in prestigious events such as the Dakar Rally, Score, Best in the Desert, ATV MX, Cross Country, and Works, Elka Suspension has established itself as the go-to choice for athletes and enthusiasts alike. But they don't just stop at ATVs. They're constantly expanding into new markets, including UTVs, trucks, SUVs, pit bikes, snowmobiles, and more. Their commitment to innovation and quality means they're always looking to improve and adapt so you can enjoy a smooth ride wherever you go. Want to learn more about what Elka Suspension can do for you? Visit their website at elkasuspension.com or give them a call at 450-655-4855. They will always be happy to answer your questions and help you find the perfect suspension solution for your needs.
So, West Coast, that's kind of an interesting deal there. So if you go back probably kind of that same time frame, I started getting involved in Florida. Um, so I guess I'll tell you this. This is how it comes into play. The evening or the night, almost midnight, that I was going and pulling up at a friend's house in Florida, um, before one of the races. Because what I do, again, you get to know these people, and I mean, just great people in this community, right? And so instead of me driving over there and sleeping the night before the race in my trailer or whatever, one of the guys in near Live Oak, Florida, which is before I would get to Dade City by about 2 hours or so. Lou Batello, who's real big into the 350X scene. Guy knows every inch of those machines. He'd be like, man, why drive all the way down to the track, or why pull off on the side of the road? Just stop at my house and then I'll load up with you. We'll go to the track the next day. So literally, as I'm pulling up to Lou's house, one of the nights, pre-race, there's another racer that had come over there a couple times from North Carolina who hasn't been racing the last few years. But as I come inside, they're watching Vegas to Reno as Wrangle's like his last 4 or 5 minutes on the course. So I walk in, they tell me what I'm looking at, and Wrangle's coming up onto the podium at the end of Vegas to Reno when he soloed it that first year. So from there, that kind of put us, of course, all three of us are like, oh, we have to do that, right? We got to get out there and do that. And, and if you go even further back, it was, hey, again, me being a kid in the 80s, I'm reading Dirt Wheels and Three Wheeling, and I'm seeing all this West Coast. I was seeing hey, they go to Glen Helen, they go to Pomona, they go, these other places, but it always intrigued me, all the long distance desert races, and even, even the shorter, some of the D38 stuff and everything. But I just always wanted to do that. Where I'd even said, even if all I ever do before I get too old to do it is I go do like one of the Baja tours where I can actually go ride part of the Baja course for a few days or something, guided. I'm like, just something I need to do before I'm too old to do it. And so when that happened, and I guess again, that was what, 2021 or so time frame, we saw that, and some of us started loosely planning, saying, hey, we're gonna, what do we need to do to make this happen? And about that time is again, just this crazy world of the internet we have now. I bump into James DeCoker online, and James talking, he'd post a lot or comment on posts, and so I see him comment a bit, so I'm like, well, evidently this guy raced back in the day, so let me pick his brain a little bit and see if I can gain some knowledge. And in my mind, I'm selfishly, right, but more importantly, hey, does he have any connections out there that can help me? Because certainly I can build a bike and I can get a bike out there, but what do I do if it's just me looking at my bike once I'm out there? I mean, I got to have other vehicles and other people to support this effort. And, I at least know enough about it to know that. So I start talking to James a little bit. And then lo and behold, in February of 22, President's Day weekend, I make a trip out west with some friends from Louisiana and Texas. I go to Glamis, and who ends up camping right behind me but Wrangle and Damien with DT Trikes. And so, and they had Matt Owen with MTR tires and such, all back there, and they had a slew of trikes with them. And so, of course, and I'm trying not to bug Wrangle too much, right? But trying to pull some information from them, hey, what do I need to know and what do I need to do to actually put an effort together to go race out west, because I want to do what you do. And so from there, just kept in touch with James here and there, and would occasionally message Wrangle, and just again trying to gain some knowledge and see who might be available to help. And then going into 2024, kind of, I guess late spring, early summer, James knew that in 22 I'd had an injury where I broke my collarbone. And when I got back home, my doctor said, hey, no, let it heal, let it heal, let it heal. Well, that went on for, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. And he told me how you broke it and where you broke it and your age. It's going to take a while to heal. Well, finally, I'm 4 months later and it didn't heal, right? So, the long of it is I broke it in late February that year. And in about August, the doctor and I finally came to the conclusion that, well, it's a non-union, it's not going to heal. And so he said, hey, go do what you want to do. You're not going to hurt it. You're not going to do any damage. And I'm like, seriously, I can go grab my trike and go to Florida and race? He's, knock yourself out. And he said that's actually good, because if you go do that and you can go do the activity you want, then you just, message me back and tell me, hey, doc, I think we're good. He said, but on the flip side, if you go try to do it and it's too painful or too weak, then we need to
Mhm.
talk. And so, sure enough, I go race with the guys in Florida, and I was incredibly sore because I hadn't been doing anything for quite a while. But the collarbone and that associated shoulder actually felt okay. But then a few days later, I got on my mountain bike and tried to actually ride on some trails. And the pounding from the mountain bike on all the roots and all the smaller stutter stuff, just I knew that wasn't going to happen, moving forward. So at that point, again, the long part of the story, hey, you go from February and now August, September. By the time the doc and I can get our schedules lined up, he's cutting on me in November. So what should have been a simple collarbone injury, keeping me out for 2 or 3 months, really kept me down that whole year of 22. So it wasn't until 2023 I was starting to ride and be active again, and then did some local racing, Louisiana, Florida, Texas, and then at that point is when I rolled into 24, and James contacted me and said, "Hey, is your shoulder feeling good enough to go make a run at it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, we're good." And so then the funny thing though was, as you know from talking to him, he had raced a 200X back in the day, early on in desert racing. I think actually he raced a 185 initially, but he raced a 200 for a while before going to the 250. And he said, and I said, yeah, yeah, I can be in on that. I think I can make it this year. And he said, well, so do you have a shock we can use for a 200X? And I said, whoa, wait a minute. We're planning on doing Vegas to Reno on a 200X. And he's like, yeah, well, one of the guys that I've been talking to out here, and he said he had two racers lined up already for the team. So I would be number three. And so we talked a little bit, and I said, look, if we're going to do this, and as you know, I mean, the time, the money, the effort, the long hours you put in, all the prep, and all the planning, I'm like, could we do it on a 200X? Yeah, sure, we could. People did it years ago. But I said, no, why don't we just take my more modern conversion? And I mean, I don't consider mine modern. It's based off of an '05 Yamaha WR 450. And so it's got Hall's clamps on it and just the Yamaha quad rear end. So Richard Mastis out of Arizona, and I might be massacring his last name, but he built that bike along with he's built multiple conversions, and he'll use like Lewis Milky's clamps, or he had used some Hall's clamps, and he would do the normal, hey, you do a little bit of machining and narrowing on that Yamaha quad swing arm to get it to mate up to the dirt bike frame, for the swing arm bolt, and had a good conversion there. So I had that, and I'd raced it a couple of times over in Florida and felt comfortable on the bike. And so obviously much more modern suspension. It's got, I believe my bike actually, it doesn't have the Yamaha forks on it. It's got like around a 2000 vintage CR 125, CR 250 fork on it. And so it's kind of this a little bit of a weird amalgamation, a little Frankentrike. But I mean, it runs really good. It works well. It is slow for a 450. I mean, that's the one thing. Like when I'll show up somewhere and they're like, "Oh, that's a 450. That ought to be crazy fast." Well, no, it's a '05 WR, and they were pretty slow at first, and they had different head, different cams, or maybe not different head, but at least different porting, different cams than the Yamaha, just a lot of different setup than the YZ. So they're considerably slower than the same year YZ. And so yes, it's a 454 stroke, and it's nice to ride, but it's not the fastest 450 out there by any stretch. But that's Go ahead.
Did you do pretty well last year?
Yeah, I mean we took the bike all the way down, went all the way through it. Had a local racer friend of mine who's auto mechanic by trade, but he's, rebuilt multiple uh, dirt bike and ATV motors. He pulled it all the way down for us. New crank, new bearings, the whole deal. We actually replaced the cylinder because when we did pull the top end, that I could that I could tell tracing back the lineage and of this bike and who it was built for originally and then who owned it after that. I'm probably about the fifth or sixth owner of this machine. So it's been passed around a lot. So when we pulled the cylinder, it was not 100%. So we just went ahead and went with a new cylinder also. The head was good, but we raced it in V2R, and like I said, it wasn't the fastest thing on earth, but I mean it made it all 555 miles, and I mean that's what counts in the end, right?
Right, right. That's what I'm getting at. To finish first, you must first finish, and to
Yes.
have success, you must finish.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
so you guys got to the finish line, and
We got to the finish line. I mean, really, I mean, yeah, Leonard, I don't know how much you want me to talk. There's a lot to talk about pulling that team together though, because you
well,
know,
I mean,
it's
we're probably going to roll into a second episode because the history of where you come from and where you've gone is deeper than I expected.
oh,
But
okay.
so you spearheaded the trike team, or was James spearheading it with your machine?
So it was kind of a combination of both. I mean, so like I mentioned, James was the one who reached out to me and said, "Hey, are you good to go for this year?" And he already had these two other individuals in play, so to speak. And just to give you the short version, so those two individuals did not end up being on the final team. Um, and and so it ended up being, James, and James did just from a, hey, helping to get this thing going, and he handled dealing with Best in the Desert and getting us registered. He helped significantly. He was our primary financial sponsor. Um, as far as, hey, we had to go through the bike and get a lot of parts and pieces that we didn't have. But there were other team members that also threw into the pot, so to speak. Everybody had some skin in the game, even down to like Wrangle was a last minute addition to the team. And because at first with the team makeup changing, and hey, some riders started off thinking they were going to be on the team, that didn't happen. Julian joined us, David Ham joined us. And then initially at the end, Wrangle was just going to be helping out as far as support and chase. And then one of those original riders that was still part of it became not part of it. And Wrangle said, "Hey, if y'all need me to take a section, I'm happy to do so." So he wanted to ride, right? I can't blame him. So yeah, you're coming to the race to help us out anyway. So get on. And he made us a really neat skid plate for the bike, which was very, very helpful. Really neat design he had, which held up. And so the bike did well. The team came together well, but it was really from as far as so I guess it was kind of James as the maybe originator and primary sponsor. Me from pulling, some of the riders, I guess, came in through James. Another local Louisiana guy, Mike Wise, came in through me. When we thought we had these two initial riders, and then myself, we decided we needed a fourth. We pulled Mike in. He was good to go with it. He had never raced a trike before, but he was really adept at racing quads. He's a fast quad rider, and said, "Hey, I'm up for the adventure. I've always wanted to do a race like that." And then, with some of that other rider shuffling and losing some of those guys, that's when Julian and David and all came into play. They had reached out to James. And so then Julian helped from kind of a logistics standpoint, just helping us figure out, Julian and I would talk like what riders are taking what sections and putting together our pit books and our plan for the race, so to speak. Um, and then, of course, I'm here back home in Louisiana, putting the bike back together and building the bike. And then, with Mike helping on some of that, and then Mike and I loading up and getting it on out to Vegas. I mean, it was really a combination, without James kicking it off and kicking in some serious support, it wouldn't have happened. Without me having myself as a rider and the bike to utilize, it wouldn't have happened, so you had to have those two major pieces to the puzzle to make it happen.
In your wildest dreams, did you ever imagine that this would happen?
Um, Up until probably 2022, um, after talking to Wrangle at Glamis, I didn't really think so. Because again, like I said, hey, me and the Florida guys, seeing Wrangle do what he did and saying, yep, look at that. They're letting trikes do this again. Let's go do this, and then I'd come back to Louisiana and I'm sitting here thinking, I don't know if these guys are going to be able to make it all the way from Florida out to the Nevada desert and make this happen. Or, because then it's not like, hey, you live 8 or 10 hours away and you can get a bike and all the support gear necessary, you know.
Are you ready to be captivated by one of nature's masterpieces? Discover the breathtaking beauty of Antelope Slot Canyon, a natural wonder in Page, Arizona. Join us on a guided tour and immerse yourself in the mystical light beams, rich colors, and serene landscapes. With tours at prime sunbeam hours, experience photographer's paradise and capture memories that will last a lifetime. Comfortable shoes, a camera, and a smile are all you need for this adventure. Book your journey today at Antelope Slot Canyon Tours and let the canyon enchant you. Please visit us now, antelopeslotcanyon.com, for more details.
So it's a little different there. So with that in mind, I didn't think it was going to happen, but then that's where once James and I got talking more seriously, and he said maybe he knew some people that could help support. What it really came down to is, and again, hey, all the pieces of the puzzle. If we wouldn't have had, Julian was one of the pit support vehicles. David Ham brought Richard Masteus on board with us, and Richard showed up with a pit support vehicle. Um, so, and then of course Mike and I drove over and had a truck with us. So, we had three vehicles supporting the effort, which was adequate. But without all of that, Mike and I couldn't have just driven over there in his truck and done that, right? I mean, even if he and I just been jumping in and out and leapfrogging, and I mean, that's really difficult to do, right? I mean, you've
Right.
got to have some other people. I mean, you've done it multiple times. You really need to have a support staff. And and so, Julian joining the effort. And so he's experienced at it. He's got the knowledge. He's got a vehicle he's bringing there. He's got, some other pieces and parts to lend a hand with. And then the same thing, with David and Richard showing up. Because I tell you what, when we got there, we still had a lot of work left to do on the trike, um, so it was pretty intense once we got to Vegas.
I bet, because a machine that needs work and then being out of your element, probably not having the same work tools that you would normally use, dealing with people that you're just meeting, you know.
Yep.
So good thing you guys all mesh really well together.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, it was interesting, because we show up in Vegas and Mike and I pull up to the venue, the event, host hotel, and we meet everybody face to face. And of course we'd had calls, like you and I talking face to face. And so we kind of knew these guys, so to speak, but it was the first in-person meeting. And other than me and Wrangle meeting before. But then we all jump in trucks. We all run north of Vegas to a shop that, David Ham had gotten us access to. And, those folks, again, just great people, open arms. We roll up, roll the trike in. They're like, here's your spot. There's tools here. Julian had some, because Julian's a mechanic by trade. He had his tools with him that he had brought. The shop had tools there that they were willing to let us use, and those folks were great helping us out. And I mean, we worked on that bike until late that night, and then more the next day. And we were the last machine through tech on Thursday. So we were definitely, we were cutting it close, and part of it was just like you said, out of your element. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know exactly what you need or don't need, because there were some things that, between all the experience of, again, like Julian, Wrangle, Richard, they would see something and be like, nope, that's not going to last. Oh, you've got these parts. Yeah, let's swap that. There was a few different things like that. And then, so there were some things that came off the bike, some things that went on the bike, some things we tweaked in the shop right there. And, through all that collective experience, we're able to make it happen. Not to say there weren't, some tense moments there, and a few, you know, personality conflicts, but I think by the end of the first night, we ironed that all out. So then working together Thursday, it was smoother and better. And and we got it through tech and got it ready to go.
You know, it sounds like learning each other was a big portion of the hurdle,
Right.
and you guys sourced that by working on the machine. So you were problem solving and sorting personalities at the same time.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And that, I mean, to just bring a group of guys together in a stressful environment where you're trying to do that, and to even succeed to get it to tech, that was a great accomplishment right there.
Yeah. 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 And there's even, so some of this you could think, well, hey, yeah, well, Donnie he was inexperienced, and yeah, he had Mike helping him too in Louisiana, but they didn't know what they're doing for desert racing. And hey, we didn't, right? We knew cross country, we knew motocross. But we knew enough to get a bike ready. But there were other things that happened, just happenstance, that kind of put us further behind the eight ball than what we would have been, and made it that intense. Because again, here, having somebody local to us rebuilding the motor, and I didn't even know this until, gosh, probably 8 or 10 months after the event. But I'm sitting there, I pull the motor, I'm making good progress on other items on the bike because there's plenty of stuff to do, right? And then I get to a point where I'm pretty much done with everything else, bike prep, and I'm waiting on the motor. There were a few things I could have done, but I was also, if I'm being honest, at that point I was kind of lacking motivation until I got that motor back in my hands. And so I probably let an evening or two go that I could have made some more progress on the machine, and I didn't. And so, once I get the motor back, then my timeline was more compressed, and I'm trying to, get other things done. Well, lo and behold, I thought, there were just some other things that had our friend who was working on the bike, just had him time constrained. Well, what really happened is he was putting the motor back together, he was pressing a bearing in, and he cracked the case half. And he felt so bad about it. He didn't want to freak me out with my machine, my motor, but being such a stand-up guy, he just ordered a brand new case half, got the motor together, and so that's what the motor delay was on this end, and I didn't even know. And I guess he cleaned up the existing cases so well, I didn't even notice that it wasn't that original case set, or half of it wasn't. So that's, when you look back at it now, it's like, oh man, if this wouldn't have happened, I would have had that motor, whatever, 2, 3, 4 days sooner, would have been making more progress. Wouldn't have been so late getting out of here because we left Louisiana later than what we wanted to. And then there were other things, that we had to attend to on the bike once we got over there. So,
Well, but you got it all back together. What kind of machine are you guys going to run in 2025?
so this year we talked to several different folks, and what we weighed a few options. What we're going to do is run on Luke Peterson's machine. So it's essentially the same bike that he ran in 22 and 23. I know he skipped 24, and talking to Luke, I've gotten to know Luke a little bit the last couple years, again, just around the race scene. I guess I actually first met him at Dade City at the Three Wheel National in Florida back in 21. But seeing what he did over in the desert, and as we were weighing on our options on what to do for this year, I knew that from talking to him, I knew that he didn't necessarily want to go back and do Vegas to Reno again because he felt like, hey, I've done it twice, kind of been there, done that. I checked that off the list, conquered that one. And so but I knew he had interest in doing the 1000. Um, Me personally, I know, now my machine is proven. I know it could make the 555 miles it made last year, even though we had some troubles along the way. But I knew it also wasn't the fastest bike out there. Certainly, probably not the best handling machine. So I got to talking to Luke. I mean, we did talk to some other individuals and other possibilities. Ran a few scenarios, by a group of individuals, and then came up saying, "Hey, it's going to be me going back." Again, my friend Mike Wise here from Louisiana that I race with, he's going to go back with us on the trike. Luke will be there on his machine, bringing his machine out of, his home area. And then Kevin Adcock's going to join up with us. He's done the race before, both with Luke and on his own bike. And, so we'll have a little bit of experience there collectively. And then, there was some talk, since this is such a long race, about bringing on another rider. So there's a rider that Luke knows from back home that really has some interest in doing the race. And, Luke's vouched for him. I don't know the guy. I've never met him. And he's a younger guy, but he wants a crack at the desert. So Aiden Lipham is the
Oh,
guy's name, and I'm probably not saying his
I
last
was
name right,
I was
but
just looking it up.
but yeah, so that'll be, our fifth rider. And James is going to be a part of the effort. And really, hey, James is going to be our PR guy, again, helping us out, on the sign up side, the finance side. I know he just got us actually signed up for the race, I think last Friday, Thursday or Friday. So I'm really interested to see for this Legacy 1000, where we're at. I mean, I know you had heard also that they were looking for a minimum of 25 pre-registrations to make it happen for handlebars. And so by my count, I think right now we're at 25 officially pre-registered. I haven't seen an update because I know they're dealing with, hey, I think they've got another race this weekend, this coming weekend. Um, so they haven't put out an updated list, but between their most recent post that I could find showing, I think we were at 22, two other individuals commented on that post that they were 23 and 24. And then I know, our team is 25. Now, I know there's some other, I know for a fact one other team that should be there. I know is not signed up yet. Actually, I might have David Ham, been talking to him a little bit today, and he's kind of more like, hey man, I ride a lot, so yeah, we're not signed up, we intend on being there type deal. So I'm sure David, and I don't know if they're going to have Sammy with them, or I've heard of some other possibilities that might be joining up with them for this particular race, but I'm sure those guys are going to put an effort together and make it there. So that'll be great. So I think we'll have, two strong teams there on two strong machines. And then I've seen they've got somebody signed up Ironman right now. I don't know the individual. I think I was talking to Wrangle and Julian maybe earlier this week or last week. They know him. So that'll be interesting. At least we'll have a handful or more three-wheel entries into the 1,000. That'll be great.
I think it's awesome. I was kind of hoping that you guys would run a traditional machine, but I get it. It's so difficult to come up with a machine. The 350X is obviously your only choice in the traditional. I mean, it's really not. You could run a 250R as well, but the 350X would be the choice, other than you're short on some of the pieces, probably. You know, you're going to take a perfectly good 350X and go 1,000 miles on it, and it's not going to be a perfectly good 350X after that.
Yeah. So talk to me about that then, because you know a lot about these machines, probably, even though I've been racing them the last few years, and I've loved them, since my childhood. You know a little more technically about them. So for you to hear you say the 350 would be preferable to the ATC 250R, talk to me
Well,
about that a little bit.
so if I was the guy doing it and we were going to do a 250R, you're going to have to get really in depth to it to put the proper transmission components together. You're going to have you're not a slight on any of the guys that do anything, but there's only
Hmm.
one guy I would let touch the engine, and that's my brother. you know, because he's going to do it right.
Right,
We're gonna build it the way it's supposed to be built. Putting the componentry in there, the size of the motor you run, some of the componentry that you're going to do. You're going to have to decide: are we gonna upgrade it to modern day standard 250R, or are we going to run old school cases? These are just things that you're going to have to decipher. Same with the 350X. You're going to have to find
right,
mission. You're going to have to make sure that you have some backups. You're going to have to dig deep because not everybody wants to let go of some of these components, uh,
right,
especially to go race. If you're going to have them at a show or look at them, no problem. But if you're going to go ride the thing, absolutely not. Uh,
right,
I like the idea of the modern day trike, like the what David Ham and Luke's bike. I think that's super intriguing because if you run a CRF platform, you're running more suspension. The machine's going to handle better. It's not
right.
as hard on you guys. Luke's bike is obviously proven, you know,
Yeah.
and there's the logistics of it and how to put it together. Just because I've done it doesn't mean the guys that are doing it aren't competent. I wouldn't always do it the way they do it, but that's me.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
when I'm doing it for me, I'm doing it my way. Um,
Yeah.
I'm on a team with somebody or joined into a deal. We talk about it and solve the best way to do it. Uh, It's
Yeah.
just it's super expensive. It's super time consuming, and I just I just hope they didn't spare a penny on nuts and bolts. You know,
Right.
I mean,
Right.
because racing over the years, watching in the desert, that was the biggest downfall. The teams that didn't take the time to put the new pieces on or to change the hardware out or to do certain things, they were the guys that had the problem with that.
Right.
You know, you Luke's
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is like you're saying, first you got to finish and make it to the finish. Um, yeah, it's just, there's so many things you need to think about and look at. and go. I mean, really, you need to go through everything, right? I mean, that's the answer. Everything needs to be gone through.
Yep.
Um, but then when you look at it and once you've done it, like, hey, we were fortunate enough to finish it last year. And again, there's a lot more to tell about the actual, what actually happened, the race, the trials and tribulations, all that. But then once you've done that and you look back, um, that's part of the reason to partner with Luke is because I'm like, hey, we did it. But I know from running my machine out there, I mean, we topped out at 76 miles an hour, and that's just not fast enough. If we're like, say, to go compete with either, Bill Casey's personal TPC that David and Sammy have run before, or the new TPC that David Wiley's, got going, you can't go compete with those bikes on my modern bike that's that much, slower and doesn't have the top end on it. Are there a few tweaks I could make to it? Yeah, sure. Like before I went to Florida and raced this year, I threw a YZ exhaust cam in it, and that was actually a noticeable difference. Just ripping around with it. And that's kind of one of just those known modifications for those early WRs. But for me to race that '05 WR based machine against these other bikes, it's just, it's not competitive unless your race is excellent to perfect, or those other teams have issues. And so that's part of the reason, for reaching out to Luke, because I know he's got a really solid bike and a solid platform. I know he's got, not that you're running above 70 all the time, right? I mean, that. Um,
Right.
but for those times when you can open it up, man, it's nice to have a few more miles an hour. And if you've got the riders in those faster sections that'll take advantage of it, well, it's gonna help. Anything's gonna help. And so I just, that was part of the reason for not necessarily campaigning my machine again, is just knowing I'd be a little bit at a deficit from the start, and going to do it again and knowing how much of an effort it was last time. Um, I didn't want to do all that and not feel like I had a fair shake going into it.
Right. I totally agree with it. You know,
So,
um,
yeah,
Donnie, I want to thank you so much for starting this process off. We're going to definitely get in depth a little farther into uh, the race, the machine, the trials and tribulations of that, and we'll have to sit down and do this again and talk about it. I really appreciate you coming on and telling us who you are. And for all the three-wheeler guys that are going to listen to this, guys, reach out to me. I can't find you all. I can't you all. I need a little help. I am a busy guy, so it does take me a little bit of time to reach out and set some of this stuff up. But once we start talking or once we communicate, the avenue will be open up for you. And I have no problem talking three wheelers. If you guys go back and listen to episode 3, it's my dad talking about the US 90s and the first time he went to the Honda dealer show to see him. So, I was 4 years old on my first three-wheeler ride.
that's awesome. So Leonard, so specific to the three wheelers, can I share one other quick thing here?
Right ahead.
Um, so, like I mentioned, whatever, 8 or 10 minutes into this, that here in Louisiana, we have a pretty healthy cross country series. LACC is what it is. It's acadianaracing.com is the way to find them on the web. Um, they don't currently have anybody racing three wheelers in the series. But once again, talking to the promoter Ryan, who's a really easy to get along with guy, easygoing, does what he can. He was one of the top dirt bike racers in the series before he took it over, so he knows what it takes. I've talked to him because up until last year, we could go to Texas and we could race three wheelers in their Texas cross country series. And that was awesome. It was great. It was worth the drive to go over there. But they had to change insurance and they can no longer have three wheelers at the Texas series. But talking to Ryan here in Louisiana, if some of those Texas guys want to come over, and I've talked to some of them, but if other guys who, just like you're saying, people we don't know about, hey, they could be right here in Louisiana, Mississippi, Florida, Arkansas, whatever. Hey, Tennessee's close too, right? Um, they could come be part of the series here in Louisiana. And what Ryan would do as the promoter, currently the ATV classes, they have, of course, they have a youth classes, but they have an A, B, and a C adult class, and they could just come pop up on a three-wheeler. Like I could take either one of my 250Rs or my modern bike, and I could go race A or B class right now. He'd probably let me run B on the trike. But the other thing he has said is if we get 5 riders, he'll give us our own class. So all I need is 4 other trike riders willing to come show up and race them cross country in Louisiana, and we get to compete on three-wheelers. And the other thing too, as you know, with some of these series, it's great to be able to go, this Louisiana series goes top to bottom of the state. So, you may have some flatter, sometimes more wide open courses in the southern part of the state, or some really tight areas, and some of them tight and or, a little bit wetter. And then you go to middle or North Louisiana and it's really, hilly and a lot of contour and terrain. So there's a variety within the state, and so it's just neat to get to go to these other venues that's all private land, and you can't get on that property without taking part in this series. So it opens up other riding areas to you as a rider.
Okay, so I got a question.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be a doozy question. Okay, I've been to Louisiana. I've ridden four-wheelers in Louisiana. How do you deal with the water moccasins, the turtles, and the alligators?
All right. So in a nod to James the Coker, he always asked me about the alligators. What do you do about the alligators? So so the funny thing is you're not dealing with them all the time. I did, 65 feet from where I'm sitting right now, out in my backyard. I've got chickens. I did kill a water moccasin yesterday while I was out there by the chickens. So it's that warm again, and they're out again already, but they're not everywhere, right? I have probably
You
run
trying to like?
into,
Who you trying to?
yeah, yeah. Well, I'll tell you this, I've probably seen more deer during the cross country races than I've run into snakes. I mean, you get, a bunch of dirt bikes and ATVs and running around the woods, and I think everything just kind of gets out of the way. Not to say that it doesn't happen because, so this is Monday night, Saturday morning. I was at a local mountain bike race here, and sure enough, about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through the loop, come over a little dip, and boom, there's a snake right there. And some other riders had gone before me, and thankfully they had already, I think, taken the life out of them. But yeah, so, and then I could tell on my second lap, yes, he was in fact dead because he was basically in the same spot, but he was kind of jumbled up. Um, so I mean, it does happen. Um, but I'm not aware of anybody, actually having an adverse encounter with the snake, like actually getting bit while attending one of these events. So, you know.
Well, I was visiting Marty Hart at his place, and we were swimming in the pond, and I just, just we were just swimming in the pond. I didn't think nothing of it. My first time, right? And I just happened to ask him. I go, is there alligators in here? And he goes, oh yeah, there's a 12-footer that runs around here all the time. I'm like, we're swim. Yeah, he ain't gonna bother us. And I'm like, yeah, that's not exactly what I wanted to hear.
He must have kept him well fed so he wouldn't bother you, right? Had no
Uh,
need to bother you.
well, I went riding with Marty in the swamp, and he just said, by the time the second four-wheeler goes through the mud hole, everything's gone anyways, and it ran off and
Yep.
hid. You don't got nothing to worry about.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
the
Yep.
only mistake I made is we'd go ride, and you're mudding, right? So you gotta rinse off the dirt off your off of you. So you jump down to the river and just get in real quick, splash the dirt off, and go.
Right.
Well, we didn't know no better. We were out, past waist high in the river, and they're like, "Hey, get in here! What are you guys? What's wrong with you guys?"
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We didn't know any better. We're
Yeah.
from California. There's nothing in the water that's going to kill you in California.
Yeah. And I mean, they're there. I think a lot of it's just luck, right?
Or bad luck, one way or another, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I will say my dog, who, thanks to my wife, she's been letting him in and out of the room I'm in right here, right now, because he'll go back and forth at night. But that poor old guy, he is 14 now, and I was walking him about 6 months ago on a trail, just down the street from my house, and we saw a water moccasin, and he got bit right on his snout, and I mean, just swelled up, pretty significantly, but gave him some pain meds that you could give a dog, because you can't give him ibuprofen. Um, but gave him some stuff I was able to give him, and a couple days later he was okay. Um, but yeah, so you do have to be aware it does happen, but he was not riding an ATV, so
There you go. So riding an ATV, you're safe, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Well, I appreciate it. I really do love the nature portion of it. You guys get to go out and see terrain that us West Coast people are never going to get to see. And that's, if anybody's going to go ride in these areas, knowing that it's there, they need to take these trips. They need to go to Louisiana. They need to race some of these places. That's the only way the sport's going to grow. If we
Oh,
don't do,
absolutely.
yeah. I mean, like you guys coming west, we need to go east.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a say. Hey, I mean, people reach out to us because it's not just me. There's other guys over here. There's that group in Florida. Just like we've told David Ham and Julian. Now that we've got to know those guys a little bit, we're like, hey, come over here, come join us, come race a round or two with us. And David said this graciously. Said the same thing. Hey, I know you want to race works. I come on out and I'll let you ride one of my other machines. So look for that next year.
That's great. David is a good dude.
Oh
Um,
yeah, absolutely.
I got to meet him. I've got to meet him multiple times, had him on the show a number of times. He is a genuine nice guy when you get to
Yep.
spend some time with him. I mean, he'll take the shirt right off his back to hand it to you, and takes great care of everybody. Just a real solid human being.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Agree 100%.
Well, most of the people that race ATVs, in my opinion, are solid human beings. So
Yep.
that's why
The
we love.
vast majority.
Yes, yes. Donnie, I want to thank you again so much. You and I will reconnect and we will have a second shot at this when we can get into what it was like in the desert and some of the things that you guys got to experience now that we've got all of the history out of it. Um,
Sure.
like I said, I really appreciate it. I'll be reaching out to some of your other teammates. And if you ever need anything, now that you're part of the ATV Talk family, reach out to me. I'll be more than glad to help you anytime. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, don't forget to share us with your family and friends. The podcast is available on all streaming platforms, and you can find us on social media as ATV Talk Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Rumble, and Twitter.